Hi everybody, this is Coach Joe again, and we are here to talk today about this favorite area in training called the core. I know there's a lot of information out there on the core. I'm going to try and help you understand how to sift through that information and really understand what is it you need if you're an athlete or just a person trying to get fit to have a healthy functioning core. So before we get started, as always, let's jump into a question. Which athlete do you think has the strongest core and why? So what actually is the core? Well, as you know, it's somewhere in here, right? The core is the soft band and bony structure through the spine of muscle and tendon and tissue and fascia that connects the two major strength zones of the body. The strength zones are what we call, in biomechanical terms, the rib cage and the pelvis. And we call them the strength zones because these are the areas of the body where strength is applied to the body's two primary motion movements or activities. One is locomotion, walking, jumping, running, squatting, standing, and the other one is manipulation. So we're basically designed to function with those two primary outcomes. And now in simple terms, we often use the example of the barrel. Your body is basically like a barrel. The upper strength zone, the rib cage, is the top section of the barrel. The lower section, your pelvis, the lower section of the barrel, and the core is in the middle. And any small dent in that barrel really compromises that barrel's ability to withstand outside force. And everyone's seen the example of a pop can. You stand on a pop can, you balance, that little tin pop can with no dents works fine. The moment you tap it from the side, it collapses. And that's like having a dysfunction in your core. Any small area that's kind of weak, when you start to accelerate locomotion or really work through high-speed manipulation, what happens is you get a breakdown, and generally you get a little tweak or an issue or a pain. And so oftentimes you're experiencing that. You'll hear athletes or people in general say, oh yeah, I felt my back. All I did was twist or turn or do something. Those are those little dents showing up. So what are the muscles of the core? Well, there's great anatomy lessons online. You can go and find them out. Some of the big ones that you know about, of course, is rectus abdominis, your transverse abdominis, your obliques, muscles of the erectors, the multifidus. But also, above and below in those strength zones, you've got muscles like the glutes and the lats and the chest. They're all muscles of the core, and we need to understand how all those integrate to allow those two major activities to work together, locomotion and manipulation. So, I asked a question earlier, which athletes have the strongest core and why? In my career, I've had the good fortune of actually testing thousands of athletes across the planet, all Olympic disciplines and sport disciplines pretty much. And two sports really stand out when we go to core testing. One of them is gymnasts, and the other one is sailors. Olympic level discipline, lasers and the single boats that you see out there at the international competition, whether it be the Olympics or whatnot. Now the question for you is, why? There's some other athletes with strong cores, don't get me wrong. But why do these sailors and gymnasts have really strong cores? The answer is simple. It's because they need strong cores, so they train them. But they don't just train them in a single plane of motion. They train them for all the actions that the core allows. And this is what we're going to talk about today. Which brings me to question number 2. What are the 12 primary actions of the core? Because these 12 actions make up pretty much all movement through the core section. So the 12 actions of the core, how many of them were you able to guess? Well, the first thing I'll tell you is it's kind of dependent on understanding the actions that allow manipulation, the actions that allow locomotion. So let's talk about the actions that allow manipulation with the arms. There's 6 primary actions the core integrates to cause manipulation or movement. First is front flexion, and the next one, back extension. So there's always an opposite. The next being side flexion and side flexion, left and right flexion. And the third category being rotation and rotation. And what you notice on all these movements is the pelvis is stable, the upper body core section is moving. That's the first 6. The next 6 is the reverse. The upper body being stable and the lower body pelvis moving. So it's the exact same motions. It's pelvic flexion, pelvic extension, see that to the rear, pelvic flexion to the side, pelvic flexion to the side, and the last thing, pelvic rotation. Pelvic rotation. So those are the 12 actions of the core. And now ask yourself, when you go and do a training program from the core, how many of those actions do you actually include? Because it's the ones that you're not doing that start creating those dents in the pop can. And that's usually where people get in trouble, where it's working one day, bend down, tie your shoe, boom, you blow a disc. Or getting tired and fatigued while you're running and you start to collapse. So we're going to take a look at those 12 actions and a really good tool to address them in your daily program. So we're here today at National Sports Council, National Sports Institute of Malaysia, with one of our favorite elite athletes, Komalam, who is the national sprint champion of Malaysia and one of the best 100-meter runners in the region. And she's going to be helping demonstrate these exercises. And I think it's important also to watch, even an elite level athlete is going to struggle with some of these motions, because we do spend a lot of time over focusing on certain parts and underemphasizing others. And remember this always, your strengths don't hold you back, your weaknesses do. So we want to work through all those actions right now. Komalam's going to demonstrate each of these exercises. So the first thing we talked about was upper body or upper rib cage, upper strength zone flexion, and then lower strength zone flexion. And we're going to do this in a lying position. My favorite tool for training the core is still the ball. For one reason and one reason only, the ball is a curve. And all your core actions, if you think of your spine, if you really think of your spine, then you understand your core. It curls, it curls, it curls, it curls, it curls, it curls. The ball allows that better than anything else. So the first motion is going to be upper strength zone, rib cage flexion onto the hip, onto the pelvis, and simply hold the ball in front and feel the ball as you curl up, like a normal sit-up. Let's give that a try, Komalam. And nice and slow. She's a sprinter, so she does everything fast. Control it, nice. A little bit of a pause. Most important thing, yeah, keep going. Do a couple more. Curl and control. Don't throw yourself into it, that's momentum. All right, your body's natural response to a command is to find the easiest way. At the start, just focus on control. Good. So that again is controlling the pelvis stable and the upper body curling onto it, front flexion. Next one we're going to do the exact opposite. Now we're going to control lower body, pelvis flexion onto the rib cage. And so what you want to do is put your hands at the side to stabilize, not that far. Put them here, it's better here. Yep, and use the muscles of your pelvis, lower pelvic floor to lift. That's it. That's the motion you're looking for, that little up. That's the pelvis being lifted onto the rib cage, and that's difficult. Control it. Good. So that's the two starting motions, the one we focus on a lot, everything in the front. So the next one is going to be upper body rotation, and the key thing here is to make sure that you lift the upper body off the ground, rotate, and then set it down. So start. There's a slight lift, and then the rotation is done while you're lifted. Don't just switch and turn. You can start there. If you can't lift yet and all you can do is turn side to side, that's already a plus. Once you get a little stronger, lift and rotate. Good. Most important is you see this part of the body staying stable. Now the same thing is applied to the lower body. So every one of these actions has a plus and minus. The rib cage moving on the pelvis moving on the rib cage. Now we stabilize the pelvis, we go to the side, we drop the knees down to the side, and we lift and rotate. Lift and rotate. Really try and lift here. Lift and rotate. Good. Lift and rotate. Breathe. Lift and rotate. She's working on this one. This one I almost always find a weakness, from a world champion to somebody just coming after pregnancy. Good. And this is a part of the muscle action for people that's really hard to control. We don't focus a lot of time on it, but it's a really important one to really build those weaknesses around the pelvis. Okay, so these next actions are going to be an extension of a combined action of upper body flexion with lower body flexion onto each other, and we're doing it unilateral left to right just for a little more actual engagement or function or movement specificity. What we're going to do now, again using the ball because we can wrap around the ball, and you can see here she's already curved back because that abdominal wall starts contraction in that extended position, and that's important. As you get better, you can even get the legs dropping low. But to start, all she's going to do, I'm going to stabilize the ball because she's new on this right now. She's going to be bringing left hand, right leg, right leg, right hand, left leg. Go ahead and give it a try. And the key is go slow and curl. Lift the two pieces of the body together. Go ahead. It's a simple crunch. But it's challenging. If you actually see, she's stopping about halfway through. Really bring the two parts together. Bring the pelvis up. Bring the pelvis up. That's better. Try and curl your pelvis up as well. Now this is very typical. Upper body dominance. Just stop there for a sec. What we see here is less activity here and more activity here. And that's typical because we spend most of our time doing core ab work on the upper body, flexing on the pelvis. Very little or token work with the pelvis flexing onto the rib cage. Now, in most life activity, that's actually what happens, but it does create dents, it does create instability. Okay, so the next exercise now is going to be upper body flexing laterally onto the lower body. And what we do in this situation is, especially if you're new, balancing on the ball is a little difficult, so find a wall, find an apparatus, something you can brace your foot against as you see here. I'm gonna give her a little bit of support, but what's really critical is make sure the pelvis doesn't drop to the back. This is a common mistake in a lot of core exercise where we wanna try and engage the rectus abdominis because it's the dominant strong muscle group. So keep the pelvis facing forward. Your pelvis tip here is facing to the ground. I'll just put my hand there forward so she's forced to do that. And all she's gonna do now is curl down to the side and come up to the side. Yep, hands crossed on the chest. Yep, it's a limited motion, that's it. Keep coming up, keep coming up. And don't turn to the rear, stay to the front. That's it. And down, and we'll stop there. Let's switch to the other side. And what you're gonna see here, there's a good chance we're gonna see an imbalance left to right. Very common to see an imbalance left to right, even with elite athletes. Which side feels easier? Yeah, we can see, take a look how much more range of motion. Look how high up she's coming compared to that other side. So, if you know anything about sprinting, it's actually a series of a lot of counterbalances and rotations. And as her coach and I know, this probably shows up somewhere on the track as well. But see how much control she has here. And that's why we're focusing on different actions. We're trying to find the dents. Good work. Upper body, rib cage, flexing onto the pelvis. Pelvis stays stable, the curl happens here through the core. So I'm just gonna give her stability so she can actually do this. If you don't have a partner to help you with it, or a coach, you put your feet underneath the couch, you put it under a dumbbell, something to give you the stability of the pelvis on the floor. And lift. And all you're trying to do is lift. Now, I'm isolating her pelvis forward on purpose because the moment I stop that, go. She's gonna wanna turn to the front and dominate with the abs again. We don't want that. We want that pelvis drop to the floor and lift. It limits range of motion. It focuses on the muscles that control lateral flexion. For a sprinter or many athletes, it's really critical. And same thing on the other side. We saw that nice strong action there. Let's see if it's as strong. Again, here now I'm pulling the pelvis forward and try. Now, this one she's struggling with. She's fighting me, she's forcing her hip back, she's throwing herself up, and we saw the weakness in the other exercise like this, and we can still see it here. So don't worry about coming up, just contract the muscles. There, stop there. Just contract. Now you're doing what's the right thing to do. But you notice you can't come up as high, right? All right, stop there. So again, it's really common. Remember what I said at the beginning. It's all about finding the dents in the core's primary 12 actions so you can focus on them because somewhere they're going to show up at some point in life. Okay, so now, again, we've done the top, rib cage onto the pelvis. Now it's pelvis onto the rib cage. This is also a very difficult exercise. So all we're going to do is ask her to lift. Most important is to get that thigh off the ground. If you can get the pelvis off the ground, you're at a next level. And I want you to lift to the side, thigh off the ground. Yep. Again, I'm going to make it a little tougher by bracing her pelvis forward. Yep. And we can see she's got pretty good strength here. You're not going to get a lot of range of motion. We'd ideally want a little higher, but it's strong. What she's doing now, she's lifting that pelvis just slightly. Most important, she's engaging all those muscles along the side of the body that control that action. And then roll over. You can roll to the back. We'll go straight into the next one. Now it's the other side. And lift. You just go through that. Which one feels harder? The other one? Yeah. So we see here she's actually able to lift this quite strong on her own. She's actually getting a little more range of motion. And we've already realized this is dominant and strong. The other side is a little bit weaker. And good. Okay, so we're now going to work on a little bit of a twist of extensions that really engage that last part of the core, muscles in the glutes, the lats in the back, and controlling twists and extensions through the pelvis and the rib cage. So the first one we're going to work on now is lower body lifting. All right, this is really engaging the glutes. It's a really good exercise. As with all the exercises, one piece is stabilized. In this case, it's the rib cage. And what she's going to do now is she's just going to lift around the ball and extend all the way, get her legs as high as she can in the air, and really contract the glute. Go ahead. And what's important is you actually want to get that curve. Curve, that's it. Go to that full extension. Go to that full extension. Control, yeah, just a half second at the top. Just control it. Lift. And you know you're doing the exercise well when the ball isn't moving. That means you're in control. Unless you're trying to move the ball. And one more. Good. This is something you'd expect from a sprinter. Good, strong glutes. All right. The other half of that exercise is now taking the rib cage and extending it or flexing it to the rear onto the pelvis. This is a back extension exercise. So what you're going to do is cross your hands on your chest, use the ball again, curve all the way down, curve, 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 and all the way up, 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 really hitting that top glute, all the muscles along the lower back and spine, and stabilized by your transverse abdominals. We would like to see a little more curve in here. That's again why we use the ball, to emphasize the curve. Good. And stop there. So the next exercise is going to be rotating the rib cage on the pelvis, a very common motion, often where people get hurt, reaching behind them, reacting quickly, moving quickly. And then we get tweaks through the lower back and spine. And you're about to see why people get hurt, because for a lot of people, this is a limited movement when we don't train enough. So come on down, world-class sprinter, let's see what she can do. Very simple again, we stabilize the pelvis so the core can rotate the rib cage. And the whole motion is to come back, So go ahead and give it a try as we were practicing. Just twist, twist. And what you're trying to see is twist in the spine, twist, twist. We can see strong, her strong side is showing up again. Weak side, there's not much motion. Now just stop for a second. What I want to show you is I'm going to assist her. And as I assist her, you're going to see that she can do a lot more than she's currently functionally able to do. And this is what range of motion is. Her range of motion is limited, but her flexibility is actually high. So let's go through that motion again. Now look what I can do. And up and rotate. That side's still limited. Up. So with assistance, she can do almost double what she was doing, which tells us that some of her body's motions are not supported by strength. And that is what range of motion is. It's a function of flexibility and strength. She's got flexibility, but not full strength or range of motion in these exercises. And it's definitely something she should put a bit of time in. Whether it helps her in sprinting or not is another story, but it will help stabilize that and protect it from things like lower back injury. And so the very last exercise now is the pelvis rotating against the stable upper body rib cage strength zone. So it's a very simple motion. She's stabilized in a push-up position, and now we're going to rotate through the core again. This is all about moving through the core to control and allow movement in the pelvis. All right, give it a try. And the key here is slide that ball under you, helping her a little bit. Keep the pelvis stable. Let the core twist. Let the core twist. Well, that's a wrap on the 12 muscle actions that the core allows. And combinations of those become essentially all movement. Again, remember this. It's either the pelvis that is stabilized and the rib cage is moving on the pelvis, or the rib cage is stabilized and the pelvis is moving on the rib cage. How did those exercises feel? I mean, you've not gone through all those motions, I think.
Yes, it's really great for me to learn a new with you. With all the exercise, I learn. I understand my flexibility, my range of motion, and my weakness, imbalance in my body. Motion.
And I know coaches there looking at it thinking, now you know what I'm talking about. Now you know the areas we're trying to work on. What's amazing again is, remember, even elite athletes have weaknesses, and that's what we do as strength or conditioning performance specialists, is try and find those weak areas and help create a better sort of balanced body.
Exactly.
It might not always mean they run faster, but it does support them when they're doing things like plyometrics or jumps or a lot of motion when this is starting to get fatigued. So keep that in mind. Focus on the complete action of the core. Have a good think about that. Get yourself a ball and have a play with those exercises. And hopefully you'll find some value to this. Comment as always, questions as always. We'd love to hear from you, and let's keep moving forward.